We're often told that problems are things that get in our way and stop us from making any progress in our lives. But in reality, those problems aren't always what's holding us back, because sometimes they're exactly what helps us move forward. And that's the core message behind this excellent book, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, a practical guide to turning adversity into advantage. And it's one of those rare books that changed how I deal with fear, setbacks, and other problems that I had to deal with in my life. And that's what we're gonna dive into in this week's episode of Action Notes, the ongoing series where I share the most useful, practical, and actionable tips that I've taken away from some of my favorite books so you can use them to improve your own life. And I'm gonna talk about the 3 actionable takeaways that I've taken away from this book that will hopefully help you change your life as well. So my first takeaway from the book is see obstacles as opportunities. Now, one of the hardest seasons of my life was when I was doing residency training in internal medicine, working as a doctor in a government hospital in the Philippines. And our schedule back then was very, very brutal. We would work 36 hours straight, no proper sleep, like running around non-stop the whole time. Then after that, we'd finally get to go home, but only for one night. And the next morning, I'd be right back in the hospital again for another 8 to 10 hour shift. And then the day after that, boom, another 36-hour hospital shift. This wasn't just for a few weeks, like this went on for the whole 3 years. And it was exhausting. And at some point, I started to feel completely miserable. Like I remember thinking, why aren't my parents rich? Or why was I born here in the Philippines? Or why am I even working in a place like this? And why am I getting paid so little for doing so much? I told myself that maybe things would get better after I finished training, but then COVID hit and everything just got worse. I hit a really low point. I was eating garbage or not exercising, binging video games just to escape that feeling of emptiness, of loneliness, and not having any meaning in my life, and just burned out and not wanting to live anymore. And I felt lost, and I didn't even know why I was doing any of it anymore. And I was angry all the time at the weather, at other people, at the system, and I hated myself for where I was and what my life looked like. And I tried numbing it, drinking alcohol, smoking, doing stuff that I knew wasn't helping me at all. But I had this desire that I just didn't want to feel stuck anymore. And I stumbled on this video by Ryan Holiday, and for some reason I stopped and I actually listened to what he had to say. He mentioned this book, The Obstacle is the Way, and I picked up a copy and I ended up finishing it in just a few days. And there was this passage that really stuck with me, and it said, "You will come across obstacles in life, fair and unfair, and you will discover time and time again that what matters most is not what these obstacles are, but how we see them, how we react to them, and whether we keep our composure." Desperation, despair, fear, powerlessness, these reactions are functions of our perceptions. You must realize nothing makes us feel this way. We choose to give in to such feelings, or like Rockefeller, choose not to. I had spent so long stuck in this mindset of why is everything so unfair? Like, why does it have to be this hard? Or why can't things just go my way for once? But after reading the book, like for the first time, I realized that the problem wasn't just my situation. Like it was the way I was looking at it. And to be honest, this book, it didn't suddenly fix my life overnight. I was still doing long shifts. I was still tired. I was still dealing with the same problems, but it helped me see things differently. And instead of seeing every problem as something that was just in my way, I started thinking, all right, what can I actually do with this? And before, whenever something hard comes up, I would just feel stuck. Like, of course, another thing to deal with. Great. But after reading the book, I started thinking, okay, this sucks, but maybe there's still something I can take away from it. And maybe it's not just getting in the way, that maybe it is the way. And look, it wasn't some big overnight change. I still had bad days, still got frustrated, but little by little, I started seeing things differently. Instead of always thinking, why is this happening to me? I started going, all right, what now? And that shift really helped. It's what got me through a lot of hard stuff in my life, like having just a few months to study for a big and expensive exam that I couldn't afford to fail, or starting over from scratch in a new country with my wife and our newborn daughter. If I hadn't changed the way I looked at it, I probably would just shut down. But now when things feel heavy or overwhelming, I try to remind myself that, like, hey, maybe this is the way through. And as Marcus Aurelius once said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Now, my second takeaway is focus only on your effort, because Anytime you're working on something that actually matters, like studying for an exam or building a YouTube channel like this one, it's so easy to just get caught up in the outcome. You start thinking things like, what if I fail? What if no one watches this? Or what if I just look like I don't know what I'm doing? And before you know it, you're no longer focused on the work itself. Like, you're just stressing about everything that might go wrong. And when that happens, it just messes up with your focus. You can get stuck in your head, overthinking, playing out all of these worst case scenarios, worrying about stuff that's outside of your control. And the more you do that, the harder it is to actually get anything done. Like, it becomes this weird loop of, because you're so anxious about failing that you don't even start, and because you don't start, you feel even more anxious. There's a section in the book that I come back to a lot whenever I get into that kind of mindset, and here's what it says. And what is up to us? Our emotions, our judgments, our creativity, our attitude, our perspective, our desires, our decisions, our determination. This is our playing field, so to speak. To argue, to complain, or worse, to just give up. These are choices. Choices that more often than not do nothing to get us across the finish line. And that made me realize something really simple, but actually kind of huge, that you cannot control the outcome. Like, you can only control what you do right now. And that's something I remind myself all the time, especially when I'm helping students who are stressing out before a big exam, that you can't go back and change what happened yesterday. And tomorrow, it hasn't even happened yet. But today, you can choose how you show up, how many hours you study, how focused you are. And that's the stuff that actually matters. And there's this quote I love from Bill Walsh, and he was the coach of the 49ers, and he said, "The score takes care of itself. If you keep showing up and doing the work, the results usually follow. Maybe not right away, but they usually do." And so when things start to feel overwhelming, I try to zoom in and just ask, what's the next thing I can do today? And that's usually all you need to get back on track. Now, this last takeaway is a bit of a tough one because it's about death. And yeah, I know, no one really likes talking about death. It's uncomfortable, it's scary, and for a long time, I just avoided the topic altogether. And it felt like something that was way off into the distance, like, I'll think about it later. Plus, there's so much uncertainty surrounding it that it just felt easier not to go there at all. But here's something that I've started to notice. When we act like we got unlimited time, we end up wasting a lot of it. We keep putting things off. Like, we tell ourselves, I'll do it later, tomorrow, or someday. And we procrastinate on the stuff that actually matters. And we get in our heads about things like exams or posting that YouTube video or worrying about what people might think. And we also let little arguments with people that we care about drag on way longer than they need to, because we just assume that there'll always be time to fix it later. And then I came across this part of the book that really changed the way I think about it. And here's what it says. It's a cliche question to ask. What would I change about my life if the doctor told me I had cancer? After our answer, we inevitably comfort ourselves with the same insidious lie. Well, thank God I don't have cancer, but we do. Diagnosis is terminal for all of us. A death sentence has been decreed. Each second, probability is eating away at the chances that we'll be alive tomorrow. Something is coming, and you'll never be able to stop it. Be ready for when the day comes. Remember the serenity prayer. If something is in our control, it's worth every ounce of our efforts and energy. Death is not one of those things, and it is not in our control how long we will live or what will come and take us from life. But thinking about and being aware of our mortality creates real perspective and urgency. It doesn't need to be depressing because it's invigorating. And since this is true, we ought to make use of it. Instead of denying or worse, fearing our mortality, we can embrace it. Reminding ourselves each day that we will die helps us treat our time as a gift. Someone with unlimited time wouldn't have to think like this, but you don't, so make it count. That shifted something for me, like not in some big dramatic way, but just in the little day-to-day stuff. And it made me more conscious about how I spend my time. I would catch myself like before wasting hours just scrolling or complaining about things that didn't really matter. It also made me want to sort things out much faster, especially with the people that I care about. Like, there were times that I would argue with my parents or with my wife and I'd go quiet for days. But now I try to ask myself, if something happened tomorrow, would I be okay with this being the last memory that we had together? And most of the time, the answer is no. So I say sorry, I reach out sooner, and I try not to hold on to stuff longer than I need to. Of course, I still mess up, like I still procrastinate, I still get annoyed at stuff, but having that reminder that time isn't unlimited helps me to be a bit more intentional and to stop waiting for the perfect moment and to just start doing what you want to do. And I'd like to share with you a beautiful clip from a podcast that I listened to a couple of weeks ago, and it's from Chris Williamson and Naval Ravikant, and here's the clip.
But I think the big questions are the big questions for good reasons. And if you can keep the idea in front of you at all times that you're going to die and that everything goes literally to zero, what's there to stress about?
Yeah, for better or worse, life is very short. How should people deal with its briefness?
Enjoy it. Make the best of it. You know, it's even briefer than that. Each moment just disappears. It's gone. There's only a present moment, and it's gone instantly.
And this really reminded me that we don't always get to choose when our time will run out. Memento Mori. Remember, you will die. So we have basically spent this whole video talking about how this book has changed my life and how I dealt with fear and setbacks. And if you like this video, you would love this video over here, which is where I talk about how this book has completely changed how I study for exams. So click on that video if you're interested, and thank you so much for watching, and see you later. Bye.